All right, that's page 81, and now we're going to, all right, now we're on 10. All right, go ahead.
Perfect, thank you. Ms. Brown, directing your attention to section 10, what does that section pertain to?
This is referring to how to handle if someone resigns during the course of the investigation process.
And pursuant to this policy, what happens if an employee resigns during the disciplinary process?
Basically, the process stops wherever they're at in the process, whether it be during their investigatory meeting or if it's at their pre-dis meeting or at the termination meeting. If an employee requests to resign, if an employee tells us they are resigning, we accept the resignation and the process stops.
And by the process, you mean the investigation?
Correct.
Okay, and so I guess under section 10, we can see sort of 3 full paragraphs there. So let me just direct your attention to the second full paragraph that begins with if an appointing authority. Do you see that?
Yes.
What does that paragraph relate to or say?
So if someone resigns during the course of an investigation process, the appointing authority has the, they're able to add a sentence, I think it's only one sentence, yes, a sentence to the resignation acknowledgement letter that basically notes that they resigned while they were the subject of an investigation.
And what is that sentence?
So it is noted that you resigned your employment while you were the subject of a disciplinary investigation that alleged you engaged in serious misconduct and violated department work rules that might have resulted in discipline.
Okay, so that third paragraph is sort of a example of what you can place in those letters. Is that is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Judge, if you could now go to Exhibit 12, page 1, I think it is actually for me, please.
All
Well, it's
right.
probably not going to be page 1.
Response
The
exhibit
first page.
12.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And you wanted this page 153?
Yes, yeah, it was page 1 of the exhibit, not of the packet, so I apologize.
Okay. All right, we're on response exhibit 12, and this has definitely been entered into the record. And now we are on page 153.
Ms. Brown, do you recognize this document?
Yes.
What do you recognize it to be?
This is the resignation acknowledgement letter that was issued to Ms. Novak.
And have you seen this document before?
Yes.
So you're familiar with it?
Yes.
Okay, in the second paragraph of that letter, could you read that for me?
Sure. It is noted that you resigned from your employment while you were the subject of a disciplinary investigation that alleged you violated department work rules that might have resulted in discipline.
And is that sort of similar to the sample paragraph or sample sentence we addressed just a couple of seconds ago?
Yes, except that it doesn't include that she engaged in serious misconduct.
Okay. Judge, if you could pull up Respondent's Exhibit 10 for me, please. And I'm looking for page 124, I believe.
All right, now we're in response exhibit 10, page 124, you said. You've done these, correct?
I believe we have, yes.
Yes, okay. On day 4, we marked those. Okay, go ahead. All right. Response exhibit 4, page 123.
Yeah, if you could go down to the next page, please.
All right, we're on page 124.
Ms. Brown, do you recognize this letter?
Yes, I do.
What do you recognize it to be?
This is the termination letter that was given to Lucas Weber.
And have you seen this letter before?
Yes.
And when did you see it previously?
I believe I drafted it.
Okay. And is this a true and accurate copy?
Yes.
Okay, Judge, if you could go down, I think it's just the next page. It might be 2 pages below.
Is that where you want it?
One more page, I'm sorry. Yeah, right here, thank you. And Ms. Brown, do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
What do you recognize it to be?
This is the termination letter issued to Brian Gusky.
And you've seen this letter before?
Yes.
It's a true and accurate copy?
Yes.
Okay. Judge, I'm looking for Exhibit 12, page 182, please.
All right, we're on response exhibit 12, page 182. Go ahead.
Ms. Brown, do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
What do you recognize it to be?
So this is the summary of the investigation findings that was completed by the internal affairs investigators after they completed all their investigatory interviews for this case.
And have you seen this document before?
Yes.
When have you seen it before?
So after the investigation is completed to this point, the materials get forwarded to the appointing authority, and then a meeting is set up. It's called the infraction review team, and I was part of that infraction review team where we reviewed these materials.
So you sort of just touched on this, but what is the purpose of this document?
So the purpose of this document is to summarize what the investigation, the facts of the investigation, and then towards the bottom of the summary, there's a section to identify any work rules that were violated and to justify why the investigators felt they were violated.
Okay. Judge, if you could scroll down a little bit, I'm just looking for the rule violations that are listed. I think it's on 3 pages down, if I'm not mistaken.
All right, we're on page 183 of response exhibit 12. Go ahead.
So are these the work rule violations you were talking about?
Yes.
Okay. And there are work rule violations here?
Yes.
And Judge, if you could just go down to the next page for me. Does this page also contain work rule violations?
Yes, it does.
And Judge, if you could just scroll down just a bit more for me, please. And what is this that I'm looking at?
So this part of the form, if there is a potential serious act of misconduct that needs to be identified, this is where the investigators would identify that. So in this case, these forms have a drop-down box. So that's why on the left-hand side, it says 10 agency specific. So that refers to those 5 additional serious acts of misconduct that the DOC has. And then in that right-hand column, they list out which one of the DOC serious acts they felt needed to be included and the reason why.
So these are the enhancers to the work rules you testified to earlier?
Yes.
Okay. So let me just follow up on some of the things you said there. Once an investigation is complete and the summary has been finalized, what is the next step in the process?
I believe after the internal affairs director, in this case, because the internal affairs office handled the investigation, once she reviews it, she submits it then to the employing unit. And in this specific case, that would have been to the DAI administrator. And then at that point, there is a meeting that is set up between the DAI administrator, the HR representative, and someone from employment relations. And we would meet to review the investigation materials, the summary, and determine if discipline would be appropriate based on the information that we've received.
And is that the infraction review team?
Yes.
Okay. And were you a member of the infraction review team in Ms. Novak's case?
Yes.
Excuse me, is she cutting out for anybody else? She's cut out a couple times for me. It's just me. Okay, it's not too bad, but I just want to make sure.
Well, I don't know if you heard the last question, so I'll re-ask it. Ms. Brown, were you a member of the infraction review team in Ms. Novak's case?
Yes.
And what was the team's decision with respect to Ms. Novak's case?
We determined that discipline was appropriate.
And how did you reach that conclusion?
It was from reading the investigation materials and determining that work rules were violated.
Was it a unanimous decision?
Yes, I believe so, yes.
Was Secretary Carr a part of that team?
No,
Did anyone coerce or pressure you into a specific conclusion as far as your finding is concerned?
no.
Okay, so if the infraction review team determines that discipline may be appropriate, what is the next step in the process?
So the investigators are then informed to move forward with scheduling and holding a pre-disciplinary meeting with the subject.
And what is the purpose of the pre-disciplinary meeting?
So the purpose of the meeting is to allow the subject to provide mitigation on why they should not be disciplined.
Okay. Judge, if you could go to exhibit, well, does it also allow them to address the allegations?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Judge, in exhibit 12, if you could go to page 185, I think it's just the next page.
All right, we're on page 185 of response exhibit 12. Go ahead.
Ms. Brown, do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
This is the pre-disciplinary meeting transcript.
Okay, so yeah, you've seen this document before?
Yes.
And that, well, I'll ask, when did you see it before?
I believe after it was completed, I got a copy of it.
Okay, and Judge, if you could go down to page 190 for me, please.
All right, we're on page 190 of response exhibit 12. Go ahead.
Ms. Brown, do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
What do you recognize it to be?
So this is the final conclusion page. So this gets filled out once the investigation is completed and a determination for discipline or not discipline has been made.
And who completed this document?
I completed this document.
Judge, if you could just scroll down a little bit to the bottom, please. Thank you. Or, yeah, a little bit more. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, so you testified you're the one that completed this, correct?
Correct.
And when did you complete it?
It looks like July 1st of 2020.
Why on that date?
That must have been after the pre-disciplinary meeting was held. She submitted her resignation and I received a copy of the packet.
Okay, and what was the final conclusion in this case?
She resigned at the end of the pre-disciplinary meeting, so there was no other conclusion.
And what does that mean?
Again, per policy, once someone submits their resignation, the process stops. So there's no further discussion of what would have happened in that case. What did happen is that she resigned.
Okay, so I guess just to follow up, was there ever any discipline issued to Ms. Novak in this case?
No.
Okay, so after the pre-disciplinary meeting occurs, what is the next step in the process?
So what happens next is the disciplinary action review team meets. Again, it's the same individuals that would have met for the infraction review team. So that would have been the appointing authority or their designee or other folks of their management team, an HR, the local HR person, and someone from the employment relations team. They review the mitigation that was submitted and discuss whether there's going to be discipline, and if so, what level of discipline.
Okay, and was Ms. Novak's case referred to DART?
It was not.
And again, why not?
Because again, she resigned at the end of her pre-disciplinary meeting, so there was no need to have those discussions.
And is Secretary Carr ever a member of the DART team?
No.
So after it goes through DART, what's the next step in the process?
So the DOC has a routing process or an approval process for discipline that's being recommended from the employing units, which involves review by central office leadership. And then if there is also a request for a skip in progression, it is also reviewed with the Office of the Secretary and then ultimately needs to be approved by the DOA, DPM, Labor Relations Chief down in downtown Madison.
Okay, Judge, if you could go to Exhibit 3 for me, please. I believe it's page 46.
All right, we're on response exhibit 3, and you said page 46,
Yes, please.
first page of the document. All right, we're on response exhibit 3, page 46. Go ahead.
All right, Ms. Brown, I know we talked about this a little bit before, but I just want to make sure you recognize this document.
Yes.
And again, what is it?
Again, it gives the statewide guidance for investigation and pre-disciplinary process and procedure.
Okay, Judge, if you could go down to page 53 for me, please.
All right, we're on page 53, response exhibit 3. Go ahead.
So, Ms. Brown, I want to direct your attention to the paragraph underneath the bullet points. It starts with the word additionally. Do you see that?
Yes.
Could you read that paragraph for me, please?
Sure. Additionally, DPM Enterprise ER staff must be consulted in all cases which result in recommendations to skip levels of progressive discipline, including up to termination in all cases involving serious misconduct. This excludes termination of probationary employees without restoration rights, performance improvement plan terminations, and medical separations.
And what does that mean?
So that means if in the DOC, if we have a discipline recommendation that is a skip in progression, not only does the secretary of the department, I guess, give a recommendation and approval, I have to get approval from the DPM Enterprise staff to issue that level of discipline.
And is that provision mandatory?
Yes,
And again, this is a statewide policy, correct?
correct.
And it applies to all skips of progression and serious misconduct,
Yes,
including termination?
correct.
And what is the process for obtaining the approval of DPM?
So after the discussion with the secretary's office has been held regarding level of discipline and discipline packets, my supervisor lets me know that I can send a request over to DPM. So part of my job duties is to send an email over to the ER staff over there. And in my email, I basically just state that the DOC is recommending a skip of whatever level for this individual. These are the work rules violated, the serious acts of misconduct that's associated. I include a copy of the complete investigation packet. And if we have comparable cases, such as, the behavior has happened before and we already have had approval to do a skip in progression, I include those as well.
And why do you provide DPM with a copy of the investigation packet?
It's a requirement. He wants to read, the person in the position now is a male, so he reads everything. He's very thorough. He's questioned on whether we had an investigation notice. He's missing it, so I know he reads it. It's not just a blanket, here you go, sure. He questions whether if other folks are also named in there that may have also had their own investigation, what's the outcome of theirs, just so that he is aware of and making sure that we have actually completed everything we needed to do.
Could that individual, the DPM individual you send the packet to, could he refer that matter back to DOC to investigate additional employees?
He could.
And could he deny the request for the skip in progression?
He could.